car trailer again. Pretty here. The colors are changing. Fall is certainly in the air. Somewhere over there, there's a dart. Uh-huh. Stop stabbing me. Alright, that wasn't so bad. That could have been so much worse. It has been so much worse. Okay, I need to go steer that or something. Really not excited to haul this backwards 150 miles. Don't have many other options. Should I do this? You know what? I don't want to know. Now the next really long time through traffic looks kind of like this.
Sharp right onto 3rd Street, then turn right onto US 2 West.
Thank you. She's a little heavy. Also, traffic here's terrible. I've been here before. This one time, I sold a power wagon to a guy in Canada, and the guy that picked it up for him lived like right here. Some spare parts came along with this crusty pile of dart, including a spare Barracuda back windshield. A third one, just what I needed. Now the only problem is someone put Seattle in the way. Oh, truck rolled over 90K and I didn't even notice. Have I complained about traffic lately? Oh, I think it's been a while. Anyway, I hate it. Whee! Nice. Oh no, it's getting wet. Hi, I'm Jamie. This is Dead Dodge Garage, and this is a swamp monster. I've had a lot of Mopars over the years. Like, so many. And there have been a good few of those that I considered my flagship, the main car in the fleet. There's a Barracuda I rescued and tried restoring once. Really liked that car. There's my 70 short bed truck on the right. There's my power wagon and my brother's original Duster. And there's the Barracuda before it ever got painted or turned into a race car. Way back before any of those, 13 years ago, I had this car, a 1970 Dart Swinger. It had a 318 under the hood, a flat black paint job as you can see, and a white bumblebee stripe. This was like my car. Maybe more than that, it was like my entire personality. This was a car I did a ton of learning on. My first bucket seat swap, my first console install, my first 4-speed conversion, my first engine build went in this car, my first semi-decent bodywork, my first AMD reproduction bumper that didn't fit right. Really, with these two cars, my brother and I were living Dead Dodge Garage every single day and a little bit of roadkill long before we ever put any of that to video. Eventually, my 66 Charger replaced this Swinger as the darling of the fleet, and then eventually I traded it for the garbage can Cuda, and the rest is history. It wasn't long after I got rid of that 70 Swinger that I had some regrets. I saw it listed on Craigslist a couple times for more and more money each time, and then it vanished from the face of the earth as far as I know. For like a decade now, I've been looking to either get that car back, which is probably never going to happen, or for a spiritual successor, and I've had a bunch of cars that got close. Like this Scamp, for example. I happen to own a 71 344-speed Demon. The Demon, of course, uses the same front clip as the 70 Swinger, so you'd think that would be close enough. But no, I still wanted one of these things. A few weeks ago now, a gentleman named Noah sent me an email and said, "Hey, I just found out about you through a friend. I have a 1970 Dodge Dart Swinger, and I'm wondering if you would like to buy it." Naturally, I said, yeah. He proceeded to list off some awesome parts that had been installed on this 1970 Swinger, but then mentioned that it had had a minor electrical fire and went through a flood. Naturally, this tempered expectations a little bit. I waited for some pictures, and when I saw them, well, I don't know, it looks like a 70 Swinger, but it certainly got some holes in it and stuff. But it's still a 70 Swinger, and I was still kind of excited. A couple days later, he sent me another email and said, "Hey, so about that Swinger. After removal of the blackberries, which had been covering the car for an unknown number of years, Noah tried to turn the crankshaft, and it wouldn't do that. And he realized that this thing is probably only going to be good for parts. So then the price became, let's say, right. And now we're here. And I'm questioning my life choices once again. This body style was new for 1970. When I say body style, I mean the nose and the tail end design. Because of course, Chrysler, they didn't change anything between here and here. The first generation of A-body, the Valiant and then the Lancer, lasted from 1960 through 1962. The second generation, these cars, lasted from 1963 through 1966. The A-body line was then refreshed for 1967. This was actually the last body series that Engel got his hands on. The way I said that, it sounded like he passed away or something. What I mean is he had already refreshed the Imperial and then the Chrysler full-size cars and then the mid-size cars. So finally he did the A-bodies for 67. Although previous years had been freshened away from Exner's original designs, they were still the same basic cars that he had drawn. Elwood Engel, of course, was the designer that replaced Exner at Chrysler after his stuff kind of went off the rails a little bit. Engel's designs were largely characterized by slab sides and long, unbroken lines. The new 67 A-bodies exemplified this design language even more. Look at the straight, uninterrupted lines front to back. There's a little kink in the dark quarter panel here, which I've always loved, but in general, it's a straight, no-nonsense car. 3-year design cycles were pretty typical for American cars in this time frame. The Dart followed this trend too. Of course, it was refreshed in 67, so it would follow 68 and 69 are basically the same car. Rather interestingly, when 1970 rolled around and it was time to refresh the A-body line, they didn't fully replace the car. Instead, they freshened it to this. Obviously, the biggest change was this back bumper and trunk arrangement. The taillights moved into the bumper. The bumper moved upward. A lower valance panel was added to fill in the space, and the tail end was given this angle, which was a pretty serious departure from the earlier Dart, which had a straight line here. The angle does not match the back window on the hardtop. It doesn't match the back window on the sedan either, although it may be a little closer. Of course, that window isn't laid in quite so much. This bumper and taillight design was what you might call polarizing. Some people think these are absolutely hideous. I like them, especially with the single lights. The nose was redesigned at the same time. There are extensions on the fenders that match the ones on the back. Note the drooping line that's mimicked by the hood, which is also new for 70. The grille was new. It had those vertical lines going across and a center divider. Note the inset turn signal lenses. The bumper is new. It's much narrower than the previous generation and moved upward slightly. And there's a valance at the bottom, matching the one at the back to round out the look. The front and the back don't really match. There are details that match. Again, they both have a lower valance and they both have an extension panel, but the shapes are very different. And the bumpers are very different too. This design would also enjoy a 3-year cycle, just like the previous style. 70, 71, and 72 are essentially the same exact car. But if you ask me, 70 is the best, and I'll tell you why. The legendary 340 cubic inch small block arrived in the Dart for 1968. Prior to that, the high-performance options were a 273 4-barrel Charger engine or a 383 big block. The name Dart Swinger arrived for 1969. The high-performance GTS did still exist at this time, but the Swinger 340 was your more typical performance version of this car. For 1970, there were no more GTs or GTSs. There was the Dart Swinger 340. This was the top-of-the-line performance model, and these things got all the fix-ins. You could have dual scoops on the hood. You could have hood pins. You could have a Bumblebee-style stripe in the back, and you could also have a spoiler. For 1971, of course, the Duster-based Demon arrived. This was a slightly shorter, slightly lighter car, and in performance trim, the Demon 340 was an animal. It also replaced the Swinger 340. There were actually a small number of Swinger Special 340s available in Canada in 1971 and 72, but these cars were very rare and not regular production models. Aside from those, you could have a Slant 6, or you could have a 318 in your 71 or 2 Swinger, and that was it. This is not a Swinger 340. It's just a 318 car, but I imagine if you want to build a Swinger 340 and you happen to have the pieces laying around, well, this is probably the right car to start with. Had to straighten the antenna. That was just annoying. There are other small details that are 1 year only. Here's a big one. The Dart Swinger emblems in 1970 were here on the quarter panel. For 71, they moved to the front fender where they would remain for the rest of time. There's actually one weird exception to that. The Dart Swinger Special was a super cheapo base model swinger. On those, the Swinger emblem was on the fender, as well as a little special badge, but the Dart emblem stayed right here. And I believe that was till the end of the run in 1976. Maybe they didn't think putting 3 emblems on the fender was a good idea. These script Dodge badges are only found on the 70. These changed for 71. Now, I should amend that to explain these were seen on other models like vans for many years, and they were used on Darts starting in 68. This is a random aside, but I've recently figured out the script emblem was in the middle of the hood on 68. Then 69's had a block emblem right here. 70 has the script emblem back in the middle of the hood. 71 has a block emblem over here. That's weird. There is a matching script emblem offset to the passenger side on the trunk. For 71, this would be replaced by a shorter block letter Dodge emblem. The single inset taillights in the back bumper are a big one. These were restyled to dual lights in 1971. The Dart would keep those dual lights through 1973. As I've explained in the past, the Plymouth Scamp is just a Dart with a Plymouth nose, and one of the things that makes these super cool is the fact that they got those single lights from the 70 Swinger and kept them 71 through 73. These special inset side markers were new for 1970. They were used through the 1971 Dart as well. In 72, they were replaced by that stick-on light that everything else got. Again, accentuating the difference between the front and rear designs on this car, the rear side marker is not the same. It has that same angle as the back of the car. The bumblebee stripe found on the 70 goes around that light. It's centered on it, and that looks pretty cool. The 72 and up light is shorter, and it's positioned slightly differently. So when you try to put that earlier stripe on these cars, it doesn't center on the light, and it looks really weird. The grille is shared on 70 and 71 Darts, but they're actually styled a little bit differently. Notice on the headlight bezels and the turn signals on this car, the teeth here are argent. On the center section, they're black. This is 70. This is 71. They blacked out the middle of the grille just to make it look a little bit different. My 70 also ended up with a 71 grille because the original was busted. It's really common to see this wrong. Here's the 70 Swinger 340 that has the blacked out 71 grille. Here's the 70 340 with a blacked out grille. 70 Swinger with a blacked out grille. Yeah, there's pretty much an endless supply of examples of this. There are at least a few out there with the correct grille though. For 1972, the grille was restyled to this. It's similar, but it lost the center divider, and I don't know, it's just not as good. Well, it could always be worse. The interior didn't change much. There are certainly small details that are a bit different from the 67 to 9 cars to these. The bezel for the gauges is a little bit different. That center stack thing is slightly different. There's a fancy version of this dash that has wood grain on it, but obviously this isn't that. I actually have a spare back seat exactly like this in this exact color in the shop. Wish I had a front. Anyway, all of those little things I mentioned combined to make 1970 awesome. I used to think 68 was the best Dart, and it's a really good Dart, but this is certainly my favorite. I love the emblems, and I really love the fact that they're actually here on this car. This is my third 1970 Swinger, but it's the first to have these in place. There are even more things that make this Dart Swinger best Dart Swinger. One of those things is it actually has a roof. I don't know what the percentage breakdown is, but a lot of these cars had a vinyl top. And if they did, rust right here is super common. Obviously, there's the window channel as well. This car does have some of that, probably because the window channel's been packed with mud for 20 years. But there's metal here. It's kind of strange. Even my Scamp, which is a super solid car and had the top ripped off years ago, has evidence of small repairs in this area. Deleting the vinyl top on one of these cars is a common move. But if you want to do that, now you have to decide if you leave the vinyl top trim on, or if you delete it, leaving a bunch of goofy little holes to contend with. But this car never had it, which is great. I know it never had it because this is at least mostly original paint, but also it's a non-drip rail chrome car. Notice this piece of metal covering up the gap between the main section of the drip rail and the A-pillar section. It's painted body color. It does not come off. With the chrome taken off, there would be a gap here. Here's what that looks like on the Scamp. Notice the hole. Someone has filled this one with sealer, probably when they redid the gutters here. Typically that would just be open. Damage back here and the holes are easy enough to weld up, cover with fiberglass, whatever. But if you see this, you know the car didn't have drip rail chrome. And if it didn't have drip rail chrome, it couldn't have had a vinyl top. So that's a good thing. Having said all that, I like the look of the drip rail chrome, and it would be hard to add here because the stupid corner thing is in the way. Now I could learn a lot of things about the factory equipment found on this car because the fender tag is actually in place. Or most of it. I can definitely make out EB5, EB5. That would be main body color and roof color, I believe. B5 is medium blue metallic. It's a really neat color. You know, my Demon is B5 too, but that one is GB5. EB5, what's on this car, is the 1969 version of the color. GB5 was the 1971 version, which is a little bit darker. Since we're under the hood, I guess we can look at some things in here. Most of them are not good. Plenty of mouse poop to go around for sure. And random nutshells and bits of plants. This is not an original 318. This is a 360 engine that Noah built. The headers and the valve covers and the Edelbrock manifold are all clues that there's actually some good stuff going on in here. We can't see much through this breather hole. There are factory stamped steel rocker arms. Below those rocker arms, 360 J heads. Or actually, they might not be J's, but they're definitely pre-smog 360 heads either way. And they've had some work done. There's also a good set of pistons in here. I see an Excel coil and a pile of nastiness. This car originally had air conditioning. You can see here the connections, or one of them. This is a vacuum actuated water shutoff. This would have been used for the AC to fully cut any heat going into that box. The blower fan mounting is different for AC. Note the ring thing here. The condenser is actually still in place, and we've got lines coming up to here. All of these factory air conditioned cars came with factory tinted glass. You can kind of tell that's vaguely tinted blue. And you can also see here where the Chrysler air temp sticker used to be. As I mentioned earlier, in addition to the piles of crap, like literal crap all over this engine, it is seized solid. And if one pulls the dipstick and takes a look at it, well, it's pretty easy to understand why. The full mark for the engine oil is there. But this thing is filled to here. I don't know if it's floodwater or rainwater, but one way or another, gallons of fresh water ended up in the crankcase of this engine. The chunks of rust stuck to the dipstick certainly aren't encouraging. That's even more unfortunate here than it usually would be, because again, there's a lot of good stuff in this engine. It's got a performance cam of some type. I believe the entire rotating assembly was fresh and probably even balanced, and I'd love to save that stuff, but when they're up to their eyeballs in water like that, it's not good. According to the line on there, the water level in this engine is here, meaning the crankshaft is like fully submerged. We're not entirely sure what year this car flooded the first time. We think it was 2012, so 13 years ago. If that water has been in there for that long, it doesn't bode well for the bottom end components at all. For that reason, I don't think this is a revival project. I'll drain that water out of there, and I'll see if by some miracle I can get the crankshaft to rotate, but I am not banking on it. Ultimately, this is going to have to come out. The transmission fluid is, well, okay, it's not fine. There's moisture in there, but it's nowhere near as bad. So the drivetrain is a total bummer, and most of the body looks like it just came out of a swamp, because it pretty much did. So maybe it's time to talk redeeming qualities. I suppose we could start here. This is a sway bar. Apparently this was a direct connection kit. Note the interesting way the end links are attached to the lower control arms there. This must have been before the time when you could just buy a weld-on tab. Next to that end link, some disc brakes. Look at those slotted rotors. And that's no ordinary factory-laid disc brake set either. You can't see behind these factory 1968 Dodge hubcaps, but these are small bolt pattern wheels still. But wait, there's more. The torsion bars, one of which you can just barely see down here past the steering, are also direct connection pieces. I don't know the diameter yet, but they're not factory bars. These are direct connection high-performance leaf springs. If I'm counting right, that's a 6-segment spring. I think they're probably very similar to the factory 340 springs. But there's even more good stuff, because we've got a sway bar on the back as well, and up above that, an 8 3/4 axle. I'm told it has a Sure Grip 323 center section. We've got the correct skirted drums. We've got everything. That axle alone was worth the trouble here. That is, if it's any good, because remember, it's been through a flood. The car does not have subframe connectors added, but it has every other component of a high-performance A-body suspension system, and a bunch of growth. So, for reasons that should be obvious, this is probably not a revival candidate, but it is a treasure trove of good pieces. It's also one of my favorite body styles, and a car I'd like to see live. So today, my plan is to try and figure out if this car is trash or treasure. Is it a fixer, or is it a parts donor? It's going to take some serious cleaning and digging through actual garbage to figure this out. My neighbor Steve is pretty interested in this 70 Swinger too, because he had one, very similar to mine. He looked in this thing and said, wow, that smells terrible. And he's not wrong, but it's not 57 Coronet terrible, so I feel okay about it. Now, we already know Mother Nature has ventilated the floor. I can see the ground through the driver's side floor panel here. I guess the big question is how much of the floor no longer exists. If it's just some floor patching and 2 quarter panels, that's nothing. That's normal Pacific Northwest crap. The trunk panel too, these things are normally gone, and well, this one's definitely going, but it is being held in place by this custom welded in tow hitch, so that's something. Dude, they slotted the rear valance to install this hitch, and you can't take it off now. I don't really want a tow hitch on my 1970 Dodge Dart Swinger, but this one is securely welded in place. Gas tank is super smashed. That seems to be pretty typical. The biggest deal breaker for me on building this car would be frame rail rust. Because this thing was temporarily in a river at least once, well, there could have been a bunch of muck deposited in these frame rails, and they could well be rusting out. I don't see any evidence of that yet, but I'm definitely going to be looking thoroughly. Noah built this car in the late 90s, early 2000s. And again, we're not 100% sure when it was parked, but this is interesting. The sticker on the battery is unpunched, so we don't know when it was purchased. But given that the latest year on it was 2006, we know it was a very long time ago. Anyway, here's my genius plan. I need to get all of this crap cleaned out of it, which I'll do with a vacuum. I need to get all of the garbage out of the interior. I really want to remove the carpet. I don't know if that's a right now thing though. And then I'm going to go after this car with a pressure washer. I'm going to give the engine compartment a serious cleaning because we already know that's full of water. Can't possibly make it any worse. And of course, we'll use the pressure washer to get all the green crap off the outside. Hopefully most of the remaining paint will stay in place, although I will tell you it was flaking off when we were brooming the roof. That's not exactly new either. You might have noticed this white paint stuff on the hood and tops of the fenders. He did that years ago to try and protect this metal, which was quickly becoming bare. It looks terrible, and I wish he hadn't, but anyway. Much like the interior of the car, the trunk is full of garbage. Also old tools that are probably useless. Also a 4-speed, that's kind of cool. But it is seized solid. I have lots of other things to be doing in the shop today, like working on these. But this time of year, if it's not pouring rain in the Northwest, well, you kind of got to get it while you can. It's not going to be dry for long. Anyway. Oh, right, the thing's off. Here's the trunk. Yeah, lots of garbage. Horrible stuff. Some oils that might be usable. Some spare brake rotors. A 4-speed, as mentioned, it's seized solid. There's a slant 6 bell housing. Think my brother's stealing that for some reason. I just don't even know where to start. Gloves and a garbage can, I guess. Noah used to own a mechanic shop, and after that closed, I guess he did mobile repair out of this car for a while. So there's all kinds of stuff like this, or this. There's a mag tray here, multiple old coils, and a box for the one that's on the engine now. So apparently that was a recurring issue. Nope. Obviously, we're saving this. There's a spare set of brake rotors in the trunk. They actually are slotted, just like the ones on the car. I see now these are a dual pattern rotor, so you can have the big 5-on-4.5 pattern or the 5-on-4 to retain the factory type wheels. He told me these are in here for some reason. The ones on the car, the spindle spacing was wrong or something. Anyway, these don't really look worth using, but I guess we'll save them. Borg-Warner Niehoff voltage regulator. That might well have been a new one, but I don't think it's going to do us any good anymore. The disc brake kit on the car came from SSBC. These stickers probably aren't any good anymore. There are some parts worth having. These are replacement polyurethane strut rod bushings. This might have been like a whole suspension kit. These are tie rod and ball joint boots. That's a brake biasing knob thing, adjustable proportioning valve, whatever. You hook that up to the rear brakes, then you can crank them down and prevent premature rear brake lockup. Those aren't worth having. Those aren't worth having. 4-speed linkage, that's cool. Random tools, gauge limiter, another one of those things. Nailed it. Don't think we're going to be saving those. Header bolts, but they're 3/8. Notice that says for most applications, the small black Mopar is not one of those applications. They're also really rusty. This is the cable for that timing light. That timing light actually seems to have a dial on it, which is cool, but I'll bet you it's no good anymore. That thing's heavy. Maybe I should mail this to Uncle Tony. The entire knob potentiometer thing is pulled out of the case. It must have come loose 30 years ago, and it's seized, and it's probably never going to work again. Oh, well, I tried. That is a nest. I don't know whose nest, but it's quite something. The factory trunk mat is actually under all of this mess. Most of it's covered in this chunk of moldy carpet. Even so, it's definitely going to be ruined. I could use a good dwell meter. Something tells me this one's not so good. I'd say the straps, but they're the lashing strap kind, not ratcheters. That's a huge thermostat. Probably for a Volvo. Apparently that was this guy's specialty. As you saw, the car currently has headers on it. They're the cheap kind that turn into a skid plate, and at some point Noah had planned to install some factory A-body manifolds. This is a pair of those that I found in the trunk. They were painted and they look pretty nice on the outside. On the inside they look like this, so that sucks. Also, bees! This isn't a basic 318 manifold either. This is the larger port 340-360 manifold. It's got a date code of 11-271, so that would be an A-body 340 manifold. By this time, they were just like the 318 manifolds, but a little bit bigger. The fancy, giant, swoopy 340 manifolds were gone. But you can see here the flange is flat and has a larger opening. If it was the 318 manifold, the driver's side would have a connection just like this. I found some chunks of the rear window package shelf tray cover thingy. Unfortunately, they're not reusable. This is supposed to be one big panel, not a bunch of little pieces. I'm running out of garbage can. Here's an inline fuel pump. You might have noticed the Carter style inline fuel pump under the hood, and there's another pump like this mounted to the passenger rear frame rail. I'm thinking there might have been some fuel supply issues. Coil spring compressors. Not worth saving. Oh, that was real short. Dude, I found an unbroken dome light lens in the pile. Brand new inverter. Nope. How do you like the trunk prop rod? That was included free of charge. Anyway, I'm getting some places. We've got some semi-useful bits here and part of a trunk floor. Over here, we've got a 4-speed. Now this is interesting for a couple of reasons. First, it's so rusty, every single piece on it is seized solid. Second, though, it's made out of aluminum. The entire thing. Aluminum main case, aluminum tail housing. Even if it wasn't aluminum, we could tell it's an overdrive just by looking at it because of this upside down shift lever. A normal 4-speed would have this mounted up this way. Also, the big gigantic 5 1/4 inch input bearing retainer is an instant giveaway. Very wet. Oh, that's a Snap-on hat. Or it was at one time. I think I'm going to be able to roll the rest of this garbage up in this nasty carpet and pitch it out. That's a bumper hook. Might want that. Oh, there's a detail. These 70s do not have slots in the bumper yet. I think that came in 71, so a Scamp bumper 71-3 should have the slots. I think that's a 70 dart bumper. Found some of the trunk gasket down here. Well, here's our trunk mat. It's cool it's here, but it's not salvageable. Ugh. Yeah. Tasty. Spare tire cover, similarly very bad. Oh, more nest. There are 2 spare tires in here. One down in the well, covered in that. Maybe we'll get a vacuum for that. And another one right here. What's neat about this is it has moldy mouse poop on it. At least to the point that doing some of this is possible. The ring for the filler neck boot is rusted out. Hold your breath. More nest. Truly an amazing amount of shredded paper packed in here. Yeah, that's not looking good. Yeah. Yep. Just normal A-body stuff. Water always gathers in here and then it just sits. And it chews the metal to bits. There's actually another spot that's super common on these swingers in addition to the typical spare tire well, and it's right here. Water always leaks out of either the trunk channel or the back window corners, and then it gathers here. This is lower than this, and so all that water just kind of gathers. Yeah, some of it's metal. Driver's side trunk extension's kind of still there. Really cool boat tank. Don't think we're gonna save it. Listen, it's not good, but it could be worse. I missed a couple things. What do you see back there? More critter mess. This is going to be a fun day. I completely filled one small trash can with just the contents of the trunk, and there's so much more. Look at all that. Can't wait to drag all that out. And then there's whatever all this is. Empties. Mostly empties. There are some spare carburetors. That's something. The carburetors in this bucket, one AVS Carter, two Carter thermoquads. They're both the late, not exciting type, but good for parts and stuff. Oh, one of those horrible flame-on air cleaners. We'll save the spring, but we'll get rid of that. There's a carb kit of some kind in here, and there are some various brackets and little bits as well. I noticed this car has like aftermarket seat belts. They are blue, but they don't have the right latches. This is the correct style seat belt. It happens to be black and also pretty gross. I found like 3 ancient flashlights in here. I'm certain none of them are worth having. Wow. Whatever brand of battery he put in here is not a quitter. Energizers that expired in 2009. Dusty. Also dusty. Gross. I don't know what those wheel covers are from. I'm sure Tom would know. Oh look, a free sweater. And some rocks. I'm not cleaning this carpet because I have any hope of saving it. It's already destroyed, but I will have to handle it at some point soon. The headliner in this car is mostly intact. You can see a couple chew spots and a couple seams coming apart. This is kind of the worst of it, but most of it's still in place. So I was wondering why I was finding random chunks of headliner on the ground. I know why now. It's Allen's Dart all over again. I found 2 Coke cans like this in the car. The other one had a smaller hole, but all the soda was still gone. Holiday 2004. I'm starting to think that might be a little closer to when this car was parked. The Seattle Times on the front seat from Thursday, October 7th, 2004 would be some more helpful evidence for that. If it was parked somewhere around October 7th, 2004, that's just over 21 years ago. I've noticed this driver door does not like latching unless you kind of slam it. I figured that out. This is a super common A-body thing. They just crack around the latch plate here. It's still captive inside the basket thingy in there, but it does the happy dance. And speaking of common, normal, stupid things with doors, the passenger side door on this car is very stuck. I've seen that countless times on A-bodies and even a couple times on B-bodies. Usually the solution to this is holding the handle and my size 10 boot. I definitely checked to make sure it was not locked. It isn't. Kicking at the back by the latch would be more ideal, but I can't really get there. Don't ask me why I turned the camera off, but I did, and I held the handle, and I gave it 4 solid thunks right there by the door lock, and what do you know? It opened. All right, so this isn't good. I mean, it's disgusting and terrible, but compared to the 57 Coronet, yeah, it could be so much worse. Found this under the seat. It's a fancy pool cue, or it was. Somewhere down here is a floor, and sometime soon, I might just find it. Yeah, I filled all the trash cans. I had to get a bag. This is serious business. Did find a tube of 6013 welding rod. I need dried out a little bit. I'm still working on vacuuming the interior, but I decided while I still have the car over here by the shop, I should go ahead and drain this oil pan. So I crawled under here to take a look, and I noticed something really neat. Notice this thing is like swollen downward. Bet you real good money the water that's in here froze. It doesn't seem to have cracked it at all. It's not leaking, obviously, it's still in there. I've got a drain pan under here that'll hold like 7 gallons. Hopefully that's enough. It's always a good sign when you just loosen your drain plug and water starts dripping out around the threads. Okay, party. Woohoo! Yeah. This will be draining for a while. Oil sometime today. There's a little oil. And that's it? Ugh. Where is the oil? When I opened this cap looking at this car at Noah's house, there was actually some pressure in here. And look at that. A little bit of residual green stuff. But you can't really see anything down in the radiator. If I were to venture a guess, the water pump started dribbling like a decade ago. Also, the fan clutch is bad. Something like an hour, a big bag of trash, and a very full vacuum later, it looks like this. Near as I could tell, the rear floors are kind of fine. Where the mouse stuff is, don't see any holes. You do see the seam sealer coming up everywhere. That's certainly true in the trunk too. It's like all gone. This front passenger floor kind of looks like a floor, but I think it's held together by hopes and dreams. You can see all the holes started there. It's just not solid metal. Now the issues with the driver's side floor pan are a little more obvious and getting more so. It is handy that I can monitor the progress of all that water draining out of the engine through the floor. I don't actually think this is down to flood damage either. I'm pretty sure this was starting to go when the car was still in operation. And I think that because there was an extra rubber floor mat added this way for support. Here's the top of the frame rail. The floor just kind of sits over it and gets spot welded there. Yeah. Okay. Well, this is going to need some attention. And again, though it looks better, I'm pretty sure the passenger side will need exactly the same. But that alone is certainly not a deal breaker. This is an easy repair to make, and it's one no one will ever see once it's covered in carpet. We've done patches like this before. We've done complete floor panel replacements before. The thing I'm most concerned about would be rust in the torsion bar cross member. Now, while I was under there messing around with the oil pan, I did look rearward at it. And I don't see any holes. But I see a pockmarky, rusty looking area this way on the driver's side, not too far from where the torsion bar mounts. Back in the bad old days, when these cars were still in use as normal vehicles in the saltier parts of the country, it wasn't all that uncommon to come out in the morning and find one side of your Mopar had fully drooped down onto the bump stop. The cause of that would be rust, caused by salt, in that torsion bar cross member. Here's what we got out of the crankcase. Still wondering where the oil is at. This drain pan wasn't exactly completely clean, but most of those chunks were not in it. There's a lot more I could do inside, but currently I'm running out of daylight and I really want to put a pressure washer to this thing, so I'm going to vacuum the chunks under the hood here real quick and then we'll get over there. Well, it's getting better, but it's certainly not good. There's just so much crap crammed everywhere in here. I've been assured there's wiring in here that melted down. I haven't found it yet. How long till I regret doing this next to my truck, you think? 10 seconds or 20? So much of that paint is not going to be there anymore. Big giant scrape on the door. Lovely. Some of that is primer. Some of it is just surface rust. There are some random little touch-ups on this car. Like that. Hopefully all this paint will just come right off. Nope. Oh yeah. Hashtag satisfying. Hashtag power wash simulator. I do wish a bit more of the paint was staying attached. Oh well. This bumper is unfortunately tweaked at both ends, and it ran into both of the bezels. Yeah, some of the paint's coming off the hood, but not enough. I don't know what this muck under the hood is, but it's oily and gross. It doesn't want to come off. Nice. Ow, right in the face. Well, that's a problem. Fully out of daylight now, but this sure looks better. At the very least, it looks a whole lot more like a 1970 Dart Swinger. The chrome on this bumper is terrible. I'm shocked and appalled. At least a couple pieces look really nice. Mostly just the C-pillars. I think the trunk lid's been repainted. It's hard to tell in this light, but the color doesn't quite match. And the paint wasn't coming as clean as the rest of the car. Here's the good side. It's not that good either. I pulled the lower piece of window chrome on the back so it wouldn't pull itself off on the drive home. This one is next. Unfortunately, it's super common for these trim clips to rust out, allowing the chrome to come loose. You can replace the clips, but you got to take the glass out to do it. I noticed a couple more things while I was washing I wanted to bring to your attention. Note this front tab says 2001. Someone pointed to that on the car the other day and said, so it's been parked since 2001. No, 2001 was the last year tabs were required to be put on the front license plate in Washington, although you still have to have the plate. So a car that has had its plates since before that, well, it'll show that 2001 tab. At some point between 2001 and when the car was parked, he swapped it over to collector plates, which don't require tabs. So we don't have an exact date for when it was last licensed. See this? This is the location to mount a factory hood pin. I believe all 70 Dart fenders have that. I think they may have stuck around into 71. I've seen some cars that have one on one side and not on the other. I don't actually know when they went away though. In the same vein, every one of these 70 hoods has the mounting locations punched out through the inner structure for the studs that would hold on those dual hood scoops. They also have partial cutouts right there next to where the 3-inch hole would go. Not bad for a day's work, I suppose. Of course, the next steps will be much more involved. Can't wait. Oh yeah, remind me to buy a new hose. Intentional jackknife level expert. Camera makes it too easy. Someone put a slew in the way. Man, I'm good at stuff. You know, I'd buy a new winch if this one would just die. Hey, what's that sound? It sounds like a fully brimmed fuel tank. What do you want to bet it's not fuel? The fact that this thing rolls is just insane. Okay, it hit the lip. It's garbage. That is a cool looking car getting a pry bar like a glove. Okay, I'm flat ground, pushing by hand. It doesn't roll well, but it does roll. Alan says I still need to clean out the tailpipes. I'm hoping to do this the fun way, but that might take a while. I'm also soaked, by the way. If it doesn't immediately break in half, that would be a good sign. Well, it's up in the air and I'm not scared yet. Now, there's a lot of this sort of stuff. Obviously, Mother Nature has kind of had its way with this car. There's a good bit of mud and evidence that critters have been hanging out under here, but it's not so bad. Check this out. It's grass or straw or something wrapped around the slip yoke for the driveline. That doesn't happen just sitting in grass. That happens driving through grass. That slip yoke is going into what appears to have been a nice rebuilt 904. You can see the fresh gray paint on it. This might still be salvageable. It's got a VIN over here that starts with 2G, so that would be a 1972 transmission. There might be a bit of floor stuck on it. Also, shells. Mechanical fuel pump delete plate. This is why you do not get the cheap headers for your A-body, because they always become a skid pad. Occasionally, they'll bottom out on a manhole cover popping out of the middle of the street and bend so hard they never seal again, and on hard left turns, they're pushed into your starter. That's not experience speaking or anything. Anyway, I'd really like to pressure wash the underside of this car. Probably should have done that while it was still on the trailer. I'm noticing various bruises and bumps from underneath. You can see for some reason the right side fender is completely crushed in at the bottom. The front valance is totally smashed. They pretty much always are. We can fix that with a hammer. It is astounding that all four of these tires are holding air. If I'm reading the date codes right, these are from 1999, and they've been sitting in a yard all this time. I saw this cover piece over here on the driver's side behind the rear wheel, and I figured that meant it had these evap lines. I believe only California market cars would have had this for 1970. In 1971, this was typical equipment. I don't necessarily want a tow hitch on here. It's bolted up to the trunk floor. That's easy enough to undo. There are a couple bolts behind the license plate as well, but it is welded to the frame rails poorly through here. Could probably just cut this plate, I guess. Speaking of frame rails, that's what we really want to know here. Are these any good? Well, I think they might be. This was the kind of ugly spot I was looking at before. You can see it's all stained in orange and actively wet, but it's super solid. None of this is actually the scaly rust I thought it might be. The rockers look crappy and rusty, but they too are solid metal. There are some common spots for structural rust on A-bodies. One of those is right here at the rear leaf spring perch box mount thing. All I saw back here was some flaky undercoating, which I did scrape off. This metal looks really good. One of these boxes failed on my brother's original Duster, which was not a very rusty car. That sent the leaf spring through the trunk floor this one time, which was pretty neat. My original 70 Swinger wasn't a total rusty pile either, but it had a very small rust hole in this frame rail and like that area. This one's solid though. Obviously we've got the quarter rust. This is the driver's side, which is, yeah, doing that. The passenger side looks really good, although I can tell you from experience, it won't forever. And then of course the floor situation, you can tell from under here that that rust is worse than it appears. Really, this whole panel should be cut out and replaced. They do make those, but all of this is really good news. And it gets even better. I was told this 8 3/4 A-body axle, which is a very desirable piece if you didn't know that, has a sure grip in it. That would be a limited slip type differential. Indeed, it does. When I turn this, both wheels turn in the same direction. That tells us it has a sure grip, and it might even kind of work. Attached to that terrible set of skid plate headers is a pretty nicely built dual exhaust system. I think these are 2 1/4 pipes. They don't look as big as 2 1/2. That's a pair of Dynamax welded mufflers. Judging by the style of that front seal, this diff has been overhauled. Obviously it hasn't helped because it's still oozing fluid everywhere. I suspect that might be because it's full of water. I almost can't believe this fill plug came right out. Carefully. It's not pouring water everywhere yet. Huh. Okay. Whoop. Fine, go down there. See if I care. Ow. Well, it's low, but that is gear oil and it kind of looks fine. Nice. Hey, how much gear oil is supposed to be in there? Just wondering. All right, I'm tired of this. Also being stabbed. There you go. But wait, there's more. I need to stop falling in love with every single classic Mopar that's dangled in front of me. Anyway, I really like this thing. And if the crankcase hadn't been completely brimmed with rainwater or whatever, I think we'd be driving it right now. This shouldn't work. It probably won't work. It's not gonna work. This engine is not going to turn. There's no point in even trying this. Anyway. Yeah. It's a no, gang. Not even a little. It won't work with a larger bar either. There's no point in grabbing one of those. I'm getting blood everywhere. All right, well, at least I can say I tried. Funny. Looks like the balancer's wiggling a little bit. It's just like flexing. I think I'm flexing the crankshaft. Nice. Dude. Dude. That is moving. How is that moving? Went in my mouth. There is just no way this works. I'm gonna keep trying. Go! Ah. Keep trying to break my hand. Seriously. Ridiculous. I'm gonna set the shop on fire. Am I crazy? Don't answer that. I think this thing is moving a little. What do you think? Yeah, I think it is. That tells me that probably the entire crank isn't rusted solid to the block. Probably. I know the carb is seized. There's probably water in a bunch of cylinders. Do I try and loosen this thing up? All of this is gross, and I do not want to touch it. The things we do for subs. Pulling the spark plugs now did not take long to find an issue. Number one here, completely soaked. There's a bit of a lake in there. On today's episode of Headers Are Dumb, oh, come off it. I need more hands. That's a universal and 2 wobbles in case you're keeping score at home. And I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get it out of there actually. Unlike 1 and 3, which were pig rich in addition to being wet, number 5 here actually looks decent. It's got that rusty brown color. That one was a good runner. Was being an important word in that sentence, judging by the rusty brown color down there. 7 is even worse. Much of the same over here on the even side. There's obvious rusty stuff in number 4, number 6, and in number 8 to a lesser degree. This car has a hood and it had an air cleaner. How did all of this water get down that intake? From what I've seen underneath, I certainly don't think this thing was in, 3 or 4 feet of flood water. It's certainly possible some moisture could be caught by this edge and work its way down in the engine. Some could come in around this stud. But again, it was under a closed hood. I pulled all the plugs and I sprayed some magic juice in all those cylinders. Except number 1. Number 1's still full of rainwater. Anyway, I'm doing this more. You've got to be able to see that. And you might even be able to hear it. It's going to take a while. But I think we might get this thing to turn. I could pull the starter and pry at the teeth at the back, but if it's not able to move with this amount of force on the balancer nut, then it's not ready to move. A bunch more force isn't what we need. We just need to keep doing the little wiggle there, and hopefully the magic sauce will work its way into the stuck rings, assuming that is our problem. Need a hose. Nice. Of course, I can't actually fit this in there. Found this random old primer bulb looking for a hose that would actually fit in there. I trimmed the ends off that originally went to a carburetor and a fuel tank and a boat. And now it works. Of course, I covered myself in bad gas in the doing. Dude, there was a lot of water in there. I don't know if you can see that, but it's very dirty water. Oh boy. Yeah, it's a little rusty down there. Shocking, I know. Nobody breathe now. No. Nice. We'll get some magic sauce in that one and then I guess break more thumbs. Watch the fan blade. Oh yeah. I'm either gonna get this engine to turn or severely injure myself. Maybe both. Yeah, that's something. That's something more. Oh yeah, buddy. Wow, that just feels like a normal engine. Okay, still stopping when it hits the rust ridge. You can hear the scraping in there. That would be rust being removed the fun way. See where it gets tight? I'm just gonna run into that and then go back. Still just doesn't quite want it. I'm gonna work on this for a bit. I don't know if you can see this. There's a rust trail on the belt there showing where it was sitting on the crank pulley. The end of it has almost reached the alternator. That's how far I've gotten this thing to turn. You can see that dusty spot on the crank pulley. I've turned this thing over 180 degrees. That dusty spot is kind of pointing this way now. I had been turning it forwards. I just turned it backwards, worked it back and forth again, and I think I just passed the spot it would not pass. Yeah. So that has made a full revolution. All the magic juice is coming out as I've turned it over by hand several times now. There are still a couple slightly tight spots. Those would be the chunks of rust that the rings are still slowly scraping away, but it makes full revolutions. I've done it like 20 times now. That is just amazing. When I saw the water in the crankcase and the seized carburetor and the general condition of everything and the bushes this car was parked in for 20 years, I had no expectation that this engine would turn. This was not supposed to be a will it run type video. I think I've mentioned Noah told me last time he tried to move this car, some of the wiring went up in smoke. I don't see anything horribly cooked, so I don't know what that was. We're probably about to find out together. No giant draws. As usual, I'm gonna take a screwdriver and bridge the two large connections on the starter relay here. Maybe something will happen. Oh. Okay, there's a little spark. Okay. I'm thinking that starter's seized. Getting a hammer. Come back to life! Why is it wiggling? Why? Oh. The bolts are loose. That's normal. More hammering. Ah! Why is that happening? I turned the key off. That, in case you don't know, the sound of the blower motor. Is it on a toggle or something? Yes, it is. Neat. Well, I hear the relay clicking, so that's something. The wiper switch was on, so I guess those don't work. Nothing. Anything? Nothing. Wait, there's exactly one working light bulb. I wouldn't normally do this, but it's already broken. Correction, 3 working light bulbs. Well, it's not looking good for this starter. And it's not that I'm surprised by that. Not all of the time, but some of the time this does something. It's a no, gang. I think this thing is just shot. Not surprising, like in any way. Well, that was fun, but it didn't do anything. And you know what? I think that's fine. You see, I happen to know that there is rainwater in that transmission, and I don't really want to circulate it through said transmission. I think it might actually be good. And if we drain that fluid out before trying to run this thing, there's a chance it'll survive. I've kind of learned this the hard way a couple times recently. You do not want water running through your automatic transmission. So making this thing run, or attempting to anyway, is going to involve changing the starter and draining the transmission at a minimum. And I'm just straight out of time to do any of that. It's currently Halloween at whatever time that thing says. and that means it's time to stop getting greasy. This has already gone far beyond my expectations for this project. I just wanted to see if this was a buildable car, and now there's a chance it will live with the drivetrain it already has. It's almost unbelievable. I have a couple different ideas for cool drivetrains to put in this swinger, like the 360 under the hood of the Demon currently, for example. There's actually a non-zero chance this engine's gonna end up in a different two-door Dart, but if it doesn't, it would sure be great in this one. If not that 360, we've got other options. I've got a lot of random small block parts around here, and eventually, not immediately, I could piece together another spicy performance engine. I'd like to do that, in fact. It's been so many days since I started filming this video, I don't know if I've mentioned that a 4-speed swap might be on the table. But a 4-speed swap might be on the table. I think that would be awesome, and I happen to have basically everything to do it. Somewhere in this pile, or maybe this pile, there's a set of pedals. I've got plenty of shifters. I think I have a Z-bar, might be able to piece together linkage. I put the battery on the charger, because I have a sense of humor. As I know I've mentioned in past videos, at some point I will be restoring this 340 and putting it back in Dale's Demon. At that point, it would be kind of nice to have a ridiculous 364 speed powered street machine. But we might have something workable in there already. How awesome is that? If you own this 70 swinger, what the heck would you do with it? And don't say fully restore it. I'm not painting this car. At least not this lifetime. Lots of rust to deal with first. I certainly won't be doing anything extensive with this Dart anytime soon. I've got bigger fish to fry. I think it's important at this point to acknowledge the fact that I clearly have a raging case of automotive ADD. I bounce from project to project, all willy-nilly, leaving the landscape scattered with little bits of debris from previous projects. But I also think it's important to acknowledge the fact that I didn't intentionally go looking for any of these things, and certainly not these two. They kind of just appeared. When opportunity knocks, I certainly try to answer, especially when it's one of my bucket list dream cars. Now that the crankshaft and the 360 under the hood of this 1970 Dodge Dart Swinger turns, I have every bit of faith that this thing will be making engine noises in the near future. And I do hope you'll stick around to see that. Anyway, until next time, as ever, thank you very much for watching. And remember, sometimes it floats, sometimes it don't. But aside from that, it's a pretty good boat.